These are a wonderful collection of Sennheiser microphones in front of me, and I'm going to try them all on a guitar cabinet on some heavy guitar, and I'm going to talk you through them, which ones are new, which ones are old, and why they might sound good and they might sound not so good at all. So, Sennheiser have sent me 3 microphones, and this video is in collaboration with Sennheiser. They sent me the e609 Silver, which is an affordable guitar microphone. They sent me the e906, which is a slightly more premium microphone, and they sent me the MK4, which is their new edge-terminated condenser microphone for a real kind of nice thick sound. The rest of these are my personal collection. So I'm going to try and focus on the 3 that I was sent for the video, but I've got quite a few here, and I thought I would do a semi-scientific kind of comparison of these and see why they sound different and why they might be good or they might not be the right one for you, depending on what you're doing. So I say scientific, semi-scientific, so let's start with the method. The method is I have a song that I've been writing, and just the very start of it has some big open chords, including a couple of nasty chords and ninths and stuff, which should really bring out some detail in what's going on. I have the clean DIs of that, so I've been feeding that through a Mesa Road King, which is a pretty brutal kind of distorted high gain amp with a tube screamer in front. And I've been running that through a cabinet in the live room over there, so that I've got some kind of distance between it and me. And to keep things as neutral as possible, I'm using a 1x12 cabinet, the Zilla Fat Baby, which is an unusual choice, but I wanted to try and minimize variables so that the only thing that's going to change in this entire little experiment is the microphone itself. Each one of these microphones went in front of the cabinet in exactly the same spot, which is to say slightly above where the cap was, in between the 2 blobs where the cables from the speaker connect to the voice coil. If that was on the side, then I would put the microphone off to the side, but I tend to find that's what I call the sweet spot. And again, to keep this consistent, there are a few more things that I did. I made sure that the capsule of each microphone was in exactly the same place. Not just the microphone itself, but the actual, if you take the fronts off some of these microphones, like the MK4, you might be able to see inside that the gold bit inside, that's the capsule, that's the bit that actually picks up the sound, is quite a bit further back in there than something like one of the e609s, which has a much flatter kind of design. So I made sure that the capsule was exactly 150 millimeters away from the point where those 2 dots are on the speaker. And to keep consistency again, because some of these microphones are wider than others, I made sure that the middle of the capsule was exactly 250 millimeters from the edge of the cabinet. Because that way, between the 250 and the 150, and being aimed exactly at those 2 dots, that gives me a 3D vector, so that each one of these positions is the same. And then, just to be a massive nerd, I put a 1 kilohertz test tone through each time, and gain matched each one of these so that the preamp that I used, which was in the Audience ASP880, was giving me the exact same level of minus 15 dB RMS consistently on each one of these microphones before doing the reamping. So the only thing that changes is the tone of the microphone. If one of them sounds louder or feels louder, that's actually psychoacoustic because of the frequency content of the microphones. I know this is super nerd talk, so if you skip ahead a little bit, I don't blame you. But I want to make sure that if you're hearing any differences between these, that's really the only thing that it could possibly be, because a lot of the time on videos like this, you get comments in the comments section going, oh, but how did you make sure they're all the same? Well, consistency. You know, you rule out every variable apart from one. Good old tape measures. This cabinet also has no grill cloth, so the exact dimensions and distances are repeatable every time. So, what microphones do I have here? Let's start with these two because this is the e606 and this is the e609. I previously owned the 606. Turns out they're identical. I don't know why Sennheiser had two different numbers for these. Who knows? Apparently one was a European edition, one was global, but they are identical. So the one that I was sent sounds exactly the same as this, or if there is a subtle difference, this one's been bashed and thrown around the studio for a decade. So that might be it. But these are a super cardioid dynamic microphone, and they're designed to be put in front of a guitar cabinet. So what some people do is they'll hang them off the cable. I don't recommend that, but you can. But that means that you can, if you've got to a show and for some reason you don't have any method of mounting the microphone to the cabinet, you've still got an option. And the flat part of this, it's got the word front on it, so you know which side to put in front of the cabinet. Means that if you're on a small stage, you can go past this and not knock it, whereas something big like this one, there's a very good chance that somebody is going to come along and knock one of these and move them. Next up is the e906. So we've got 609, 906. Nice. And the 906 is kind of the more premium model in the 900 series, so it's more expensive. We'll talk about cost at the end. And the big difference with this one for me is there is a switch on the back, which goes from kind of the even mode to a dark mode and to a brighter mode. So if you've got a guitar on stage, let's say you're doing a live show and it's a band you've not worked with before, and you position the microphone where it should be, but their sound is really dark or really bright, you can compensate using the switch. Going up in price here, we have the MK4 cardioid condenser microphone, large diaphragm condenser. And if you look closely through the grill, it's an edge-terminated single-sided capsule, which means that it's got a particular sound to it. It's kind of quite rich and full. I really like the sound of this. There's clips of me at 42 Gear Street using this on a lot of vocals, and it was very much a kind of a vocal-ready sound. Will that translate to guitar? We'll find out. Next up is my trusty MD421. I've had this forever. This is a very old 421, and you'll see in some of the B-roll that it's got a different clip on here that was taped on. That's quite ugly, but I lost this particular clip and I found it again. And a lot of people have issues with this particular type of clip where the mic falls off. I've not had that issue, but I know it's common. This is quite an expensive mic. These can be 400 euros, I think. Somewhere around there, £400, $400. And they have a sound that is quite deep and quite bright. And I tend to find blends quite well with, you know, that microphone that everybody uses from that other brand. Now to the weird stuff. I've got an e835, which is a pretty standard run-of-the-mill vocal microphone. And you see them all over the place. And I thought I'd give that a try because I have it. It usually sits behind me as my talkback microphone. I don't know where that word went. Brain fart. And then, interestingly, I've got the MD435. This is a $500, 500 euro, £500 vocal microphone. I did a video on this a while back, and for vocals, for me, it sounds absolutely incredible. It sounds like it's been pre-EQ'd. It sounds like it's already been kind of dipped in the mids and tailored to a vocal. Will that fit on a guitar? Let's find out. And last but not least, I have my old trusty Sennheiser MK416T. This is an ancient shotgun microphone that is usually used on film sets, you know, the kind of boom mics. I usually use it on these videos up here because it's out of the way. I can get it close enough. It cuts out a lot of the background sound. But will it handle a loud guitar cabinet? The Road King was in 50 watt mode with the modern voicing going through a Celestia M65 creamback. So 50 watt amp, 65 watt speaker. It's going to handle it absolutely fine. It was quite loud. The 609/606. And you can hear, though, it's quite a bright kind of brittle guitar sound, but it fits in the mix fairly well. And they do pretty much sound identical. At the end of this video, I'm going to do back-to-back of each one of these with and without the track. So at the end of the video, they will just be soloed so you can pick out the differences out of context. But I find that being in context is just as important, if not more so. Next up is the 906. Start with the neutral mode, and then I'm going to change it to the bright mode and the dark mode. You will definitely find that it kind of feels louder and then feels quieter as it goes through because of the way that we perceive high end as being louder. Now we've got the MK4, which has kind of a, well, I would describe it as a vocal sound. It's quite thick and warm. This thing can handle 140 dB, so it can handle a jet taking off. But I did have to use the pad on the interface, on the preamp there, because it was really blasting out of here, although it wasn't clipping inside the microphone. It just had to be padded so that it could handle on the way in. So yeah, this mic can handle a lot of level, but you have to make sure you've got a preamp that can essentially cover its ears with a pad. Let's move on to the 421. Now, as I said, this is a very familiar sound. We've heard it on tons of records with that slight kind of upward scoop, the slight brightness on the top, the slightly fullness on the bottom, the slight fullness on the bottom. So there's a reason why this has been used over and over. This was designed, I think, in the 60s. Definitely wasn't designed for modern high-gain guitars, but luckily, it just seems to work well in that application, which is why it's survived the test of time. Let's try the 835. This fared surprisingly well. I don't think it's the perfect match, but considering it's a vocal mic, I don't think it's too heavily kind of frequency adjusted inside, so it worked all right. Now let's try the MD435. Now this may seem like a massive disappointment because it's really kind of disappearing in the mix. It's quite kind of thin. This is very much tailored to a vocal. I mean, it's really kind of pre-EQ'd is how I would describe it. So it makes absolute sense to me that this doesn't work on a guitar, because guitars have quite a lot of information in that 500 hertz-ish kind of range that really helps them sit on the sides of a mix. Whereas a vocal with that 500 hertz, if there's too much of that, that can sound quite boxy and quite kind of muddled and muffled. So it's good to take that out with a vocal. So this mic is great for vocal, but not great for that. And finally, the 416. Cover your ears, kids. So of course that sounds absolutely shocking, terrible. That's because this microphone was never designed to handle that kind of level. This is an RF bias microphone, which works completely differently from how the rest of them work. And it's really meant to be this far away on something like a spoken word, very much designed for, you know, film sets and someone speaking. So it's designed not to take crazy levels. I believe that the more modern shotgun microphones can handle quite a lot higher level, but the old 416 is a great voiceover mic, great film mic, not great on guitars. So there you go. I don't want to give you too much of my opinion on which one was the best. I thought the ones that I was sent, unsurprisingly, sounded great. 906, 609 silver, MK4. The others also sounded good too. The 421 definitely has its place. For me, it works when it's blended with a second microphone, which is something I do all the time. But your mileage may vary, of course. So yeah, I hope you got some interesting insights out of this. I had a lot of fun doing it. And thanks to Sennheiser for sending over these microphones. Thanks everybody for watching. And now I'm going to do the back-to-back of all 8 of these with the backing and then without. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.